Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I would like to welcome you to today's workshop. Today, we are going to be nurturing the best possible relationships. We have three wonderful speakers here with us. So this workshop will present two aspects of relationships with a focus on how we can create fulfilling relationships. So the first part will be how to analyze our relationships to foster deep and meaningful connections. It will discuss about the needle movers of a successful relationship. What are the considerations we should take into account while navigating this relationship? Another talk will explore how we impact our relationships. It's very natural to feel that the quality of our relationships is often determined by other people's behavior towards us. This, of course, is true, but we may miss out on how much our own thoughts and feelings influence our relationship experiences. We will explore how our mindset and beliefs actually influence our relationships. This is an inside-out approach about learning how to create more fulfilling relationships. So today we have three presenters. We have Sister Sayyida Habib, Sister Jermaine Abu Shahaba, and Dr. Zafar Naqvi, who will be presenting. So I would like to first introduce Sister Jermaine Abu Shahaba to the stage. Sister Jermaine obtained her BS in biology and MS in chemistry from Rutgers State University of New Jersey. She recently completed her master's degree in exegesis and Quranic sciences with Al Mustafa International University. Jermaine is a clinical research scientist by profession and a certified life and health coach. Jermaine's passion is to serve the Muslim community by faith-based coaching and mentoring Muslims in achieving their desired goals, overcoming struggles of life in areas including relationships, career, and confidence building, and creating long-term transformation within the self. And I would like to give you the floor.
Thank you so much, sister. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And it's my honor to be talking today about relationships, myself and my respected colleagues. So in my specific presentation, what I'm going to do is going to be presenting 10 needle movers or key aspects of a relationship which can either upgrade or downgrade a relationship. If these 10 things are not in place, then a relationship does need to be worked on. I am a relationship life coach. I focus on different areas, but one of the things that I do focus on is how to help people upgrade their relationships with different types of relationships, whether it is personal relationships, intimate relationships, or friendships, or family, or community members. And what I like to do also is present the faith-based aspect. So I like faith-based coaching. So in the midst of my presentation, here and there, I'm going to be present a nugget or two from an Islamic perspective, because as I believe that Islam is embedded into everything. So Bismillah. So for the first needle mover is clarity. So here, what I'm going to be doing through the course of my presentation, I'm going to be bringing out questions. And what I would like to ask you to do is, as we're navigating through this, I want you to identify, each and every person over here, identify a relationship right now that is significant in your life, that matters, a relationship that you really want to upgrade to the next level, because there's never an end to bringing a relationship more improved. And experience these reflections that I'm going to bring ahead. So what I'd like to ask is, are you clear on what exactly you want to be experiencing in that relationship? Whether it's a relationship of a couple or friends, best friends, family, or it could be even a business relationship. Any type of relationship this presentation applies to. Of course, if it's intimate relationship couples, then it's even more, there's more significance there. Okay, the question to ask, what is it that you really want to experience? Sometimes we go into relationships and we don't really have a clear idea. We just go with the flow. But sometimes we have to really ask ourselves these questions, set our expectations. And then, are you clear on what they want to experience, the other person? Oftentimes we like to think just about ourselves and what we are expecting for ourselves, right? But we also have to realize that it is a give and take, right? It's a two-way street of a relationship, and people are in fact different, right? What is it that they want to experience? We have to listen to them as well, right? And where do you want to see this relationship in 5 years? Specifically when it comes to very close relationships, where do you want to see this relationship in 5 years, right? Do you want to upgrade it further? Or is this just a relationship that will come and go? And depending on that, the factors that we're going to be talking about is going to have a heavy weight. Furthermore, clarity. So all this focuses on clarity. Clarity in a relationship, okay? Learn to be transparent and truthful before love. We're talking right now specifically about intimate relationships. Oftentimes, especially women, emotional, we easily fall into the emotional aspects, right? And we skip a lot of the clarity that needs to be set there from the get-go. When you're getting to know someone, establish the clarity, have that transparency of what is it that you are expecting in that relationship, who you are about, what are your red lines, what are your orange lines, and so on and so forth, before giving your heart away, because then it becomes a process that is very difficult to reverse. We need to have a balance between truth and formalities. So oftentimes a relationship is new. We often, and myself speaking, it's hard to say no, right, to people. It's hard to step in and give a difficult opinion that you know other people are not going to appreciate, right? But we need to have this balance between saying the truth as clear as possible and at the same time formality. You know, you don't want to sacrifice the truth or something that is significant to you in the place of formality that you just go with the flow, but then later on, there's going to be a moment in time where this is going to come back to bite. Taking complete responsibility of one's words is part of clarity, right? You want to be clear. You want to be truthful. You don't want to say something that in reality, you're making a promise, for example, in that relationship that it's not going to be something that you're going to be able to respect, because it's going to be a reputation that's going to come on you. Insinuation is more painful than to be clear and truthful. So sometimes what we do, especially in our culture, is that we don't want to say something straight out. So what we end up doing is that we insinuate. We say, you know, we have a saying like, you speak to your neighbor, but I'm talking to you, right? We're trying to make a point that this is what we want, but we don't actually come and say it. And while this may be obvious to most people, but then sometimes, especially in a relationship, if you're dealing with the opposite gender, genders are different. The way they take things, you know, as we know, male and female, they see things black and white, and we as females see things in different colors, right? So we need to be as straightforward as possible. Otherwise, it creates misunderstanding. Compromising clarity due to fear of separation. So again, oftentimes, you know, we're afraid that if we say something, this person is going to leave us. This person is not going to like us anymore, right? So we avoid certain topics, or we move it till later once we're very deep into that relationship. But this oftentimes can create a conflict down the road. We don't want to compromise that clarity. The things that are essential to us in that relationship, we want to bring it ahead of time so that later on, then we can have a more meaningful relationship. So what does Islam say, especially when you're going into a relationship of, you know, husband and wife, right? Oftentimes, you know, we say that you put in your shurut, your conditions in a marriage contract, right? But you want to keep in mind also that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you know, ما بال أقوام الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم says ما بال أقوام يشترطون شروطا ليس في كتاب الله. You want to be clear, right? You want to be transparent, but you want to be objective as well. You want to be practical. You want to say things or put on forth your stipulations that falls in line with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being pleased as well. The second needle mover is communication, and I think that's very obvious. The exchange of words, the exchange of thoughts, feelings, and emotions that happens. How do we handle misunderstandings? Now, as we know, relationships are not perfect. Any type of relationship, there's going to be misunderstanding. There's going to be conflicts. But how do we plan to handle these misunderstandings? How do we want to resolve? How do we want to handle conflict resolution, especially these close, intimate relationships, right? We should have an idea of how we're going to go about. Just like for those of you who may be in the working field, corporate field, we have a communication plan. How do we want to escalate things, right? First, you deal with it one-on-one. Then at what point do you need to take it to a higher level and not, you know, overshare too early, and things go beyond your control and then becomes too difficult to handle. Active listening is something that we all need to work on. Oftentimes we listen, but we don't actively listen, and there's a huge difference. You know, I could be listening to someone talking to me right now, but in reality, I'm thinking about what I want to say next, right? If I'm having a little bit of an argument or a discussion, most of us, we're just thinking about what we want to say. We're not actually listening to what the person's saying and giving them the mindful listening. So this could make a huge difference in how the communication is going to go about and the judgment that comes along. Compromising, being able, after actively listening, to being able to come half of the street to the other person. Of course, it takes two to tangle, and being able to reach in an agreement. Navigating external influences with openness. So, you know, relationships are oftentimes, it's not just two people. There's other environmental factors, other people, family, friends, people who whisper into our ears, either in a positive way, but oftentimes it could be negative. So these external influences, especially when it comes to relationships, intimate relationships, can oftentimes have greater negative impact, in-laws, this and that, right? So there should be an agreement between the two people how to be able to, from the get-go, from day one, how do we handle these external influences, families and friends, and how do we want to keep our boundaries over there? Do you feel comfortable to speak your heart in a conversation? Now, this is something that's going to be related to another aspect we're going to be talking about later, which is authenticity. How do you feel comfortable in terms of voicing your opinions, your thoughts to this person, whether it is a friend? It's not just intimate relationship, but even your friend. If you're finding that you're not able to speak your mind, then this is an area that needs to be worked on. Do you require feedback or affirmation to thrive? Right? These are questions to ask yourselves. In terms of communication, oftentimes we want to give feedback, right, to our loved one, right? But sometimes the message that we want to say is nice and great, but how we say it, the way that we convey the message is different. I remember writing an article once titled on how to communicate, how to deliver the message versus the messenger. Makes a big difference how we communicate. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "Id'u ila sabila rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana." So give your message with wisdom and with gentle manner and kindness. It makes all the difference in terms of the approach in affecting the communication of that relationship. And we have a hadith from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says the inability of effective expression weakens the argument. So communication is actually an art. Okay, it is an art. It can make a big difference. Two people can say the same point, but in two different ways. So we need to work on the effective communication. And this is something that, I support my clients in coaching communication strategies with others. And Imam Ali alayhi salam says, speaking too much makes the wise one stumble and makes the tolerant one weary or tired out. Therefore, do not talk so much that others get fed up, and do not be withdrawn that you are humiliated. So oftentimes, again, when we're not actively listening, so what we end up doing is that we're talking and we're talking and we're talking, right? And we keep on talking, thinking that the others are listening to us, right? And it wears the other person down. They themselves are not able to listen, right? Because we're only hearing ourselves, and they're not even able to hear us because we're just focusing on that. It doesn't help the relationship, and it's actually not a point of wisdom. This is what Islam teaches us. The third thing that we need to focus on in a relationship, very extremely important. We cannot sacrifice self-care. Self-care is extremely important. While a relationship goes both ways, but we need to ask ourselves, how do we view ourselves independently? Ourselves as an individual, especially when it comes to intimate relationships. Yes, we say two becomes one, right? Alhamdulillah. But let's not forget that at the end of the day, there are two individuals. 1 + 1 = 2. So we need to be mindful that we need to look at our own needs, our personal needs, and our needs may be different than the other person. In what ways do you honor your needs and take care of yourself? Both physically, right? Giving yourself physical attention, your health, exercising, in terms of your eating habits. Are you creating regular time for your self-care? Oftentimes, mothers, especially in our communities, we get so overwhelmed with taking care of the kids, taking care of the husband. It becomes literally a 24/7 job, right? But where is our own time, even if it's half an hour in a day, to give to ourselves our own meditation, reflection, exercise, whatever it is that may be? It's healthy for ourselves. Positive versus negative talk. One of the things that we don't realize that we may have negative talk coming to us, right? That brings down our self-confidence or anything of that. Limiting beliefs, my colleague here and friend, Sayyida, will be digging deep into that area of limiting beliefs. So we're excited to listen to that soon. So I won't talk too much there. But moving on here, what does Islam say about self-care and self-love from a physical perspective? Taking care of our health, right? If we're not healthy, we're not going to be able to perform in other aspects of our life, right? Eating, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا. That's one hadith, right? Don't overdo it, right? Be balanced. Islam is a religion of balance. Balance in everything, in eating, in your daily activities, as well as balance in our relationships. There's a hadith which says, that when you eat, make sure, you have 1/3 for your stomach, 1/3 for drink, and one that is empty. So there's a balance there. Emotional well-being. لا يكلف الله نفسا ما إلا ما آتاها سيجعل الله بعد عسر يسرا. Allah does not put any burden on a soul. Sometimes we think that we have to give it all, more than what our energy and our ability requires, right? But then it takes a toll on ourselves. And the first thing that affects our health, right? And if we're not healthy, then what happens, right? We're not going to be able to give more. Even to our loved ones, we're not going to be able to give more because we wear and tear ourselves. Social well-being as well, developing and maintaining positive interactions with others, doing things in the community, charity organization. Holy Prophet ﷺ says, yourself has a right upon you, so give it its right. Sometimes we think that when we give ourselves some care, then that means it's selfishness, in Arabic, ananiya, but it's not. This is what the Prophet is saying. We have a haqq, the self and the body has a right upon us. Boundaries, and this is a very big topic here. What is boundaries? We need to be able to establish and set boundaries in our relationships. It's a healthy way to communicate our needs to others, to maintain our sense of self, while at the same time maintaining the connection with others. So the question here that we need to ask ourselves, and we don't need to wait till we're dug deep into that relationship. The earlier, the better. What exactly do we need to have in place in order to thrive? Even at work, we've put a project in place from a project management perspective. We put certain things in place in order to secure the success of that particular project. Similarly, in terms of relationships, right? We need to ask ourselves, have you honored your boundaries in the past? This is a question I'm posing to everyone. Any relationship that you have you honored your boundaries? What are your boundaries? Did you even think about what your boundaries are? And this is something that I do with the people that I support and work in coaching, that I sit down with them and we go through this activity of reflecting on the boundaries. And every person is different. There could be common boundaries, right? But there are certain things that are going to be specific and personal to you. And what is your method in honoring other people's boundaries? Remember now, it's a two-way street. It's not just about us. It's our boundaries and other people's boundaries. And of course, it's not an easy job, right? Honoring the boundaries and maintaining and establishing that, it takes guts, right? Challenges, there's going to be challenges, right? Because you're going to be dealing with different personalities, different types of personalities that have different ways that they present themselves. And we're going to feel hesitant in terms of how we want to establish these boundaries. How do we create the balance between our yeses and our nos? Are we always saying yes? I remember speaking to someone who, she ended up having a divorce. And then when we dug deep into that relationship, I asked her a simple question. I asked her, did you express to him that you were not comfortable with this? She said, no, I never expressed, right? So these boundaries were not created from the first place, right? And this is something we need to be mindful. And then the other person, when I asked him, did you feel that she was uncomfortable? He said, no. She said yes in everything. She was saying yes in everything, right? So we also have to have our intuition to be able to understand that people have different ways of expression. And sometimes keeping quiet doesn't always mean that this person is in agreement. And so there's certain steps in terms of creating the boundaries. So you want to be clear and straightforward while using an assertive tone so that this person understands that what you're just saying or about to say is serious. This is not a joke. They won't take you for granted. Directly state your need or request and identify your expectation. And understand that saying no is an option. It's okay to say no. It doesn't mean that it's disrespectful. And at the same time, when you're building those boundaries and you're going to have this direct conversation, it's going to be a little stressful because, there could be a little bit of a friction there. It can make the other person feel uncomfortable. So what you can do is imagine ahead of time that you're having this conversation. Be prepared of that moment of uncomfort. So here is just a quick diagram showing, the difference between healthy boundaries, porous boundaries, and rigid boundaries. Ideally, we want to have healthy boundaries, which is defined by having a good balance of connection and protection with our relationships. But if our relationships are porous, right, then we are, allowing, we're over-receiving from the other person and over-giving. And this creates things, it's not out of balance. Islam, as I said, is a religion of balance. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. We created you a nation that is balanced, and certainly balanced in our relationships. And then you have people who have rigid boundaries, right? Over strict, under receiving, right? And under giving. So this type of relationship is being protected, but not connected. So what does Islam say? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defended the Holy Prophet when people used to come to his house, not give their respect in terms of entering and staying overly as guests. So what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came and set the boundaries for the people? Out of defense and love to the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, la tarfa'u aswatukum fawqa sawti an-nabi. Right? Don't raise your voices on the voices of the Prophet. وَلَا تَجْهَرُوا لَهُ بِالْقَوْلِ. Do not speak loud to him as you speak loud to one another. Right? This is an example of setting boundaries. The next thing is trust. Right? Trust is extremely important. Believing and trusting in yourself, first and foremost. You can't build a trustful relationship if you yourself, we ourselves, we don't believe in ourselves. We don't have a sense of self-identity and trust and confidence in ourselves. Are you attuned to your intuition? Do you understand your thoughts and your feelings or not? This is the first step in understanding yourself. Are you trustworthy? Right? Again, it's a two-way street, right? If we're not trustworthy, that's going to be very obvious as we navigate that relationship. Others are not going to trust us. So we need to build that relationship of trust. Naivety versus skepticism. What is the difference between both, right? So oftentimes, yes, we do not want to trust blindly, right? We say, there's a saying that don't trust, don't just blindly trust, but at the same time, it does take time to build trust. You want to be navigating that trust with steps, with a manner, but at the same time, not to the point that you're just skeptical and anything and everyone is a culprit, right? So there's a balance in both, and you judge based on the person and the exact situation, and of course the manifestation of trust. We can talk about trust, but unless you actually prove it, then the trust is not going to build there. And of course, Islam strongly emphasizes on trust. The Prophet says the best of faith is to maintain the trust, and the worst of conduct is betrayal. So khiyanat is the opposite of trust. So where is our boundaries set when it comes to the trust and maintaining that? Maintaining trust and being trustworthy is the best of deeds. Number 6, authenticity. Okay, I was trying to think for an Arabic word that would relay that, but there's no word that gives that proper feeling. Do you feel that you can be fully yourself and still be loved? So this is the meaning of authenticity. You can simply be yourself. Or do we feel that when we're in front of our parents, that we need to be so proper? Yes, of course we need to be proper, but we need to be really coming out of our skin and not become ourselves, that it becomes something that, we walk away, we don't feel like we just acted like ourselves. If we feel that this is how it is in a specific relationship, then we need to question ourselves and ask ourselves, how do we want to shift this relationship from feeling someone that is half myself versus someone who can comfortably sit in my own skin? Honesty and transparency. From day one, we build that sense of honesty and transparency. Oftentimes, what you build from day one, the first building block, is what's going to build the building afterwards. Do you feel that you need to change yourself in order to belong? And of course, this is when it comes to peer pressure in universities, we see a lot of that we color ourselves differently, right? To make ourselves feel like we're fitting with others. We change our opinions. We change our principles. We bend our principles, right? This is not being authentic. If you feel that a relationship that you're experiencing right now is not exactly authentic, then this is something we need to work on. And of course, assessing your esteem and self-confidence. Confidence is extremely important, and this is something I support my clients in confidence, building your esteem, recognizing who you are and your identity. And really, the main question really is to ask here: who are you at your deepest core? What is your identity, right? Once you identify yourself, then this can easily bring forward the idea of authenticity in your relationships. Number 7, extremely important, fairly obvious, appreciation. Okay, thanking one another in our different relationships. Do you feel respected and appreciated from this person that you're having that relationship? Do you appreciate others? Again, we oftentimes think about what we want, right? But what about ourselves? Did we take time to thank others? Maybe the first time they gave us something for the first time, we thanked them. But then they gave it to us 20 more times. We forgot to thank them, right? Because our mom always cooks our food for us, right? And gives us the dinner. So we take it, right? But do we actually thank our mom every single time, or whomever it is who's doing favors for us? And how are you expressing? Are there different ways that we can express to really touch the heart of a person? Or is it just thank you, which is the bare minimum, right? Can we instill more love and affection by different methods of appreciation? Keeping our expectations low. Now, this is something really, really important. So oftentimes we have high expectation. I know family members who have high expectation in terms of appreciation. If you're not doing tasbih every day, saying thank you, thank you, thank you, then, you may be under the expectation, right? And sometimes we also have that expectation, but sometimes we really need to lower down our expectations while maintaining our authenticity, but not over expecting for people, because then we will be disappointed. In developing the habit of appreciation for ourselves and others, and there's a lot of benefits there. Psychological benefits, mental and emotional benefits, cultivation of happiness and well-being. When there is appreciation and gratitude in a relationship, this absolutely upgrades the relationship. It brings happiness that you may not see in front of your eyes, but it builds with time. And it also encourages the reciprocation of kindness that is shared and felt. The more you thank, the more the other person feels that they want to thank. So you actually, it becomes a cycle of khair, a cycle of goodness, acknowledging a good deed by the other person. You don't have to wait till this is something that the person did something really big. It could be something that's very simple, a simple attribute. One of the benefits of appreciation is that it reduces materialism and boosts sympathy. Sometimes we often think that if we do something, okay, what are you going to pay me back? How much is this worth? How much is the hour worth? But sometimes there's other ways that a word of thanks that settles into the heart of a believer can make wonders in how that relationship can be elevating to a higher level. Appreciation creates generosity in the emotional bank. Oftentimes you may be doing, 6 hours of work for our neighbor, and this person comes and says, thank you, or gives us a little gift. Tomorrow we're ready to go back and do more work, right? Because that feeling of appreciation, that feeling of mawadda is stronger than anything. And of course, leads to feeling comfort in expressing concerns about relationship. The more that you thank each other, right, it becomes easier to have a conversation on something really important that you want to have tomorrow, right? Because there's a sense of, in Arabic we say irtiyah, comfort that is built. And of course, you've heard many, many times how often expressing gratitude and thanks is extremely recommended. Man lam yashkur al-makhluq, lam yashkur al-khaliq. This is the words of Imam al-Sajjad. Whoever doesn't thank the people, doesn't thank Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes on thanking each other. Our relationships, very important. Right? وَاشْكُرُوا نَعْمَةَ اللَّهِ إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْبُدُونَ. And be grateful for the favors of Allah. And one of the favors is our relationships, right? The people who are around us, because we do not live in a vacuum, right? We live with people. We live in a universe with others. وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you thank, I will give you more. If you want your relationship to thrive, then thank Allah for the blessings of that relationship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you barakah and blessings even more. Number 8, and this is 8 out of 10, shared pleasure. Now, this is more specifically when it comes to intimate relationships. Divine your vision of pleasure with your different relationship. What exactly does it mean to be happy? So oftentimes I hear people say, well, I'm not happy in this relationship. Well, what exactly does it mean being happy or not happy? What's happy for me may be different meaning of happy for you. So these things really need to be defined early on. Compatibility, shared values. What are your values and principles, your morals and your ethics? What are your interests in the different aspects of your life, whether it's sports or recreation? What is your lifestyle that you want to live? All these things, before colliding into a relationship later on, you really want to make sure that these things are in place. Do you have mutually pleasurable experiences with those who are closest to you? Sometimes we think that we're both interested, but when we sit down at the same table, we find that no, we're in a totally different universe, that I'm much more passionate about this thing and the other person's not really on the same page, or vice versa. Again, it's a two-way street. Right? So overall, communication and transparency in a relationship. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the marriage relationships هن لباس لكم وأنتم لباس لهم. We are both garments for each other. And you can think about it. The garments is essentially the pleasure in Islam. When we are garments for each other, this becomes a relationship of pleasure, a relationship of mawadda, wa rahma, love and affection and compassion and mercy. ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها. And I want to highlight here the idea of لتسكنوا. Having that peace and sense of tranquility in that relationship, it takes time to build that, right? It doesn't come overnight. But that sense of sukoon and tranquility is that sense of pleasure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights in relationship. Number 9, giving and receiving. And this is very, very relevant to all of us. So creating a dynamic balance with time, okay? Think about your relationships right now. Specifically, any relationship that you have that is most significant. What is that balance between, giving and taking? Are you giving more than than you receiving? Or are you receiving more than what you're giving? Right? If there's an imbalance in this, then this is something that we need to sit on the table and talk about, right? Because it doesn't create a healthy relationship. The ability to receive is essential to achieve connection. This is something that I personally struggled at some point in time in my life where, I would plan for my ziyarah trips, right? And I'd have friends over there in Iraq or in Iran. They want to help me and book everything for me, from my flights, my hotels, from door to door, and pay money in front. I did feel a little uncomfortable with that because I feel like I don't want to overburden people, right? And we, in our cultures, we feel that way, right? But then I also learned with time that actually facilitating others to help you is actually upgrading that relationship. They feel happy to serve you, and then it also increases the cycle that you become the next time you're even encouraged to help them as well. So it's important to understand that you can receive. It's not selfish to be receiving in a relationship. And when you're receiving, understand also that while we receive the positive, also we need to be able to prepare to receive other aspects like feedback, things like, feedback from our relationships, things to improve ourselves, right? We may not like it, but this is something that a relationship is of giving and receiving everything under the sun. Also giving through non-material ways. We're not just talking about what am I doing for you and doing for me in terms of paying and these things or hardcore favors. Sometimes giving, it could be a word of thanks, right? It could be giving in different ways that is not specifically speaking good about the person, right? This is something that you can call non-material ways, okay? And what are the scales that are our balance? We need to ask ourselves this question going along the lines that time and effort invested in this relationship. Is this person investing the time and effort in that relationship? As you are investing or want to invest, it needs to be as equal as possible. Obviously, we're not going to take measuring cups and measure whether I'm giving the same exact way that you're giving or I'm receiving the same exact way. But it's a general idea that you want to keep in mind. Are there specific areas in your life where you tend to be focused on either giving or receiving? It could be a certain area that I'm always helping you in the area of cleaning, right? But, what other areas need to have a little bit balance in? And of course, we have all heard about giving and receiving. Even when it comes to giving gifts, it is noble and kind of a man these are prophetic hadiths, to accept his Muslim brother's gift. This hadith touched base with me, and give him a gift from what he has, and that he does not go to troubles for his sake. Giving gifts, for indeed gifts remove bad feelings. It washes away any negative feeling they could have. So be able to give gifts more often. And there are 3 kinds of gifts. One that is given in exchange for another gift, and another which is for reconciliation, and another is fi sabilillah. And last but not least, the 10th needle mover is personal responsibility, your personal accountability, taking responsibility for our experiences, our happiness, our success, our fulfillment. Right? It takes 2 people to be responsible in a relationship. Sometimes we like to just throw the blame over, right? Oh, he did it or she did it. She could have done. She started it, and that's why they started and I only reacted, right? So we need to also be responsible and fess up if we know that we could have done something better, and not just focusing on victimizing ourselves, outsourcing our happiness. Sometimes we look for other sources to find our happiness, but we really need for that happiness and that feeling of contentment to be coming from within us. Reflection and sessions, This is something that I do in my coaching, that we do reflections. We try to understand what is it that we could have done better. Not just looking to see what is the external aspects, but from within ourselves, so that transformation happens from inside of us. And of course, initiating for the better. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا يغير الله بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't change a group of people until we create a change within us. And of course, حاسبوا أنفسكم قبل أن تحاسبوا. Do this meditation, this reflection session. Before we are accounted in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, relationships are a beautiful thing, brothers and sisters. It's an amanat in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we will be asked about it. All types of our relationships, whether it's our family members, our relatives, our close ones, community members. So this is something that we want to keep in mind. And here, this is just a diagram of everything that I just talked about, the 10 needle movers that creates a deep and meaningful relationship. And usually what I do is I dive deep with the people that I work with in a specific relationship that they are of concern. If you are interested, to have that work with me, you can definitely contact me. And we look to find where are the areas that we really need to upgrade and set a plan for that. And just remember, and this is a point that I want you to take back with, every relationship is unique. And the importance of these factors can vary depending on the relationships involved. So not everyone is the same carbon copy. So we need to navigate these differently. This is my contact. If you're interested to have more conversation, you can just take a snapshot over here. And thank you so much, everyone. Jazakallah.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you, Sister Germaine, for sharing your expertise and delivering a thought-provoking conversation on relationships and the 10 pieces of advice that you gave us. All right. So today we are going to have our second panelist, Sister Sayyida Habib. She has been empowering Muslims through life coaching for 2 decades. She holds the Professional Certified Coach credential issued by the International Coaching Federation. She is a master practitioner of the NLP, trained in neuroscience-based coaching, and has trained in other interventions, including timeline therapy, hypnotherapy, and EMDR. She is the author of Discover the Best in You, Life Coaching for Muslims, one of her books, and Discover the Best in Your Relationships, Life Coaching for Muslims, published in 2021. And this is her second book. Sayyida has also written articles for various publications and has also been featured on radio and television, including the BBC, Press TV, Alabat TV, Islam Channel, and TV1. I will give you the stage.
So the first thing I'd like you to do is just take a moment and close your eyes. It's a perfectly safe space. Just close your eyes. And just imagine now, close your eyes. And just imagine now one of your most wonderful relationships. So just imagine, close your eyes. Close your eyes. You need this. You need to close your eyes. Okay. So just imagine that this person is somebody you really care about, who is very close to you. Just imagine them for a moment in your mind. And just notice how it feels. Just notice any sensations coming up. And also notice the first thought that enters your mind. And as you've done that, just open your eyes and write it down on the piece of paper. You don't need to share it with anyone. This is for you personally. And just raise your hand when you've done that so I know, so we can move forward. Okay, very good. Good, few more to go. Please do engage with this material because it will really, really make a difference in what we're doing today. So this is about engaging, not just about listening. This is about engaging. Yeah? Everyone just raise your hand so I know, so I can continue. Yeah? Okay. Shall I go? Shall I go further? Yeah? Okay. Now, close your eyes again. This is going to be fun. And imagine somebody in your life. It could be a colleague. It can be child, spouse, friend, whoever. Somebody where the relationship is really important to you, but it's not quite on track. So it's not really working as well as you'd like it to do. And it could be because you're not being heard or you're arguing or whatever it is. Just close your eyes now and imagine that person for a second. And again, it's somebody you care about, right? And as you do that, just notice the physical sensations in your body for a moment. And lastly, the first thought that comes to mind, or it might be more than one, write it down. I give you a moment to do that. And just raise hands when you guys are done. Need a moment? Now, just for a second, did you notice anything between the two? Yeah. Oh, same person. That's interesting. Okay. Anybody else? Did you notice something? Contrast, right? Exactly. Did the two feel different? Did the two thoughts feel different in the body? Did you notice that? Right? And they were different kinds of thoughts, were they not? Yes. This is what we want to focus on today. Okay, we're going to really focus on this. So, why are thoughts so important? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thoughts become actions.
Yeah, exactly. Thoughts do become actions. Mm-hmm.
There are internal feelings.
Yes. So thoughts generate feelings, generate actions, right? So obviously awareness of our thoughts is essential. And we're going to exactly talk about this for the next few minutes or however long we're together. The thing is, we actually have about 50,000 thoughts a day on average. I mean, you can't really measure it, right? We have about 50,000. So what's the deal, right? What makes the difference? The difference is that only some of these thoughts create our actual experience of life. How we actually experience life, not just relationships, but life in general, right? So what's the quality of these kinds of thoughts? They're often repeated, which we may not notice, okay? They have a regular pattern to them. Like, you know how Sister Jermeen was talking about patterns? The thoughts that we have also occur in patterns. We don't notice it so much. And they form our internal dialogue. Now, what is internal dialogue? It's that voice that you hear in your head that's going, what voice in my head? That's the very voice we're talking about, right? So our internal dialogue is always active, whether we know it or not. And the patterns that it's occurring in makes the biggest difference. So just take a moment on that piece of paper, right? Write down 3 things that make you, you. So anything that you think of yourself, like I am, you know, the minute you kind of have a thought, I am, you have certain thoughts that you describe yourself to be, right? I'm intelligent, I'm kind, I'm smart, I'm maybe sometimes not so great also thoughts, you know, like I'm overweight or whatever it is, you know, the thoughts that we have all the time. So just take a moment and then raise your hand when you're done. And whatever they are, whether they're positive or negative, doesn't matter. Don't censor yourself. Just write down, this is just for you. We're not, you know, you don't have to share anything that you don't want to. Just raise hands when we're done. So I know. How is this feeling? Are you guys starting to notice a connection yet? Maybe not yet? Not yet. Okay. We'll get there, right? So did you notice when you wrote these thoughts down about yourself, did you notice a feeling? Yes? Okay. Took you time. Okay. Okay. What else? But did you notice a feeling attached to that? Yes, exactly. It's often our go-to that we think of negative things. And it's not just about it's not just about ourselves, it's often about others too, which we'll get to in a moment. And we'll talk about negativity bias. Remind me if I don't mention it, but I'll mention it in a moment if I can. So the idea is that our thoughts actually impact how we feel all the time, right? And whether we realize it or not, they're in the background. They're forming our dialogue. They're forming our identity about ourselves, right? And also about how we feel about others and how others feel about us. So just imagine for a moment now, and I don't think we need to go very far, but who in their life has somebody who's always negative? Come on, we all have that one person, right? Come on. I mean, if you admit it, you can admit it. So think of that one person just now, right? And let's say you share something with them, whatever it is, whether you went out and bought something or did something, whatever it is, they'll have something to say which is not nice, right? They'll have something negative. So what happens when that happens? How does it leave you feeling? Yeah, you start doubting yourself. What else? What else happens? You feel drained, right? We're getting to that in a moment. What else happens? It's their thought, but it's affecting you. Huh? Disappointed, drained, self-esteem goes down, you feel lower, right?
Feel like whatever they're feeling, like you start to feel it too.
Bingo. Thank you. You took me right there. So whatever this lady said, whatever they are feeling, you start feeling it. So why is that? I'll explain in a moment. Why is that? We have something amazing. This is our biology. We have something called mirror neurons. Who's heard of mirror neurons? Ah, good. So mirror neurons are actually inbuilt, and how they discovered mirror neurons was they were doing a research project in Italy where they had monkeys kind of, in their brains, they had them, what do they call those? Electrodes. And they were doing some testing to see which parts of the brain light up for different things. And there was a man at the corner of the room eating something. And what they noticed, the monkey's brain actually lit up at the same areas as if the monkey was eating something. So what they started to notice is that physiologically, we actually mirror one another all the time. And we are hardwired for connection. If you take anything away today, that's the thing to take away, is that we are all hardwired. Our physiology is hardwired to connect. So this is why our relationships have such a huge impact on who we are in the world and how we experience life, right? So imagine for a second, have you ever noticed when you go out with a friend, you're sitting there and the next thing you know, they're understanding what you haven't said? That happens, right? With people you're really close to, because they can sense your energy. Those are mirror neurons. We are actually using our mirror neurons all the time. If you notice, I call these the neurons of rapport. So for example, if I'm sitting there and having lunch with a friend, before I know it, if she's got her hand like this, I'll have my hand like this. If she's doing this, I'll be doing this. Without realizing, we do it unconsciously. Subconsciously, not unconsciously, but subconsciously, right? So the point is that we are actually, so when somebody's being negative, or if we're being negative, guess what's happening? What's happening? Other people are mirroring us and we are mirroring them. So it's a two-way thing. So if you're being negative, guess what's going to happen, right? So what we're actually talking about is it's so important to note how we are actually thinking. And just to bring a really Islamic perspective on understanding this, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam said, a believer is the brother of another believer, like a single body. If any part of him suffers, he will feel its pain in his entire body. And their souls are also made of one soul. So, this wisdom has been around forever, but we are just understanding it through science, And when we bring our awareness to it, it changes our whole way of how we interact with others. So our happiness, our peace of mind, our relationships, our entire experience of life depends on what we're thinking, right? So what if we could become that little bit more aware, that little bit kinder, that little bit more forgiving? How would that change life? That's the thing, that's the question to think about right now, right? So again, coming back to thoughts, I'm going to keep coming back to thoughts because it's so important. Why do thoughts affect us so much? They're just thoughts. And we have 50,000 of them a day. So why do they affect us so much?
I think it shifts your perspective on how you view things that happen to your health.
Yeah. What else?
From my understanding, from an Islamic thought, the mind is connected to the soul.
Mm-hmm. We're one system. Mind, body, soul is one system, definitely connected. Were you going to say something? Bingo, isn't that what we're talking about, right? And then we have connections with everyone else. We have mirror neurons. So our thoughts, our feelings, our way of being is connecting with others, right? But it's not every thought that matters. It's only the ones that we have over and over and over again, right? And guess what those thoughts are? They become beliefs. So that's what we're talking about. Essentially, we're talking about beliefs. A belief is any thought that we accept as truth. Let me repeat that. A belief is any thought that we accept as truth. So we don't challenge it anymore. It becomes our truth, right? So we're all talking about, like, for example, those 3 things that you wrote about yourself, are they not your truth? Yes? Those 3 things that you wrote about yourself, they're your truth, right? They're just beliefs. They're not out there, but for you, they are true because they are your beliefs, right? And guess what happens? When we have a thought over and over and over again, the mind is actually collecting evidence for that thought to be true. That's how it becomes a belief, right? So, like, for example, I grew up, and this is something that's actually true for me even now, I developed a belief that I'm bad at math. And how did that belief actually happen? I have to accept it, it happened. But when I was younger, I used to struggle with math, and then I had a couple of really bad math teachers, and I failed a few tests and whatever. That became my reality. So what happens when you have a belief like that, or any belief, you live out of that belief. So I would never have even thought of having a career that included math in it. So we have certain beliefs that actually empower us, and then we have other beliefs that make us absolutely miserable. True? Not true? Yeah. We all have that, right? So go back to that first exercise again that you did, the first one, where you wrote down stuff that thought about the challenging relationship. Just look at your piece of paper for a second. And what do you notice? Does that feel like true? Does it feel like it's true? It's a belief about that person? It's true, right? And you will have evidence for it. They've done this, they've done this, they've done this, right? And for the good things as well, for the people the relationships that are amazing, we'll be like, wow, they're so amazing, they're always there for me, and blah, 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 right? It's the same thing. Again, both are beliefs. Both are beliefs, and both have evidence, right? So what is that telling us? It's telling us that beliefs are actually our foundation of experiencing life. And we have really empowering beliefs, or we have limiting ones. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually tells us in the Quran, in Surah At-Teen, certainly we created man in the best of makes, right? And then we render him the lowest of the low, except those who believe and do good, so they shall have their reward. That's telling you that belief and doing good go together, but also it's the foundation of what we base our life on, right? Yeah.
That's a quick question. So since we're speaking about belief, we're not a bit subjective. If you dissect belief, I'm not trying to stir you that way, but belief can be considered subjective to as well.
Of course your belief is subjective because it's based on your own experience. So my belief about the same person could be completely different than yours. So my understanding of somebody could be, like, for example, we could read the same book and have a completely different experience of it, right? And you're right, beliefs are subjective, but that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that beliefs actually impact your whole experience of life. So your set of beliefs will be subjective to you. Like, each person has their own unique model of the world. Like, mashallah, Sister Jermeen is a twin, but you have different set of fingerprints, right, than your sister? So even twins, mashallah, have different sets of fingerprints. I thought about this and I was like, wow, there's a twin sitting right in the room. So, and our model of the world, the way we experience the world is as unique as our set of fingerprints. That does not change. However, that model of the world, if it's miserable, if you have a bunch of negative beliefs in there, what's going to happen? You would have something wonderful in front of you and not notice it. You could have the best friend, the best spouse, the best job, the best everything, and not notice it. So the point is that our beliefs either make us really happy or make us really miserable. But the only way that we can actually begin to shift it is if we notice, am I putting something good in, so I get something good out, or am I putting garbage in? So garbage in, garbage out. Anyone heard that expression? Yeah. Exactly. So what we put in makes a huge, huge difference, right? So this is where we have to be really, really careful. We can choose what we believe. And if we have beliefs, we can also shift them. And I'm going to give you 5 different strategies on how to do that today. So I'm going to leave you with something practical, right? But coming back, why are beliefs so important? Because it's not just for now. It's actually for the future as well. Our beliefs become our predictions for the future. And this has actually been proven in neuroscience. It's a theory called allostasis, which actually, it's a big topic. I don't want to get into that right now. But it actually talks about how we are prediction beings. We are based to predict. Why? Because we want to keep ourselves safe. So what that means is if somebody did something bad to me, let's say I had a bad experience with somebody, the next time I see them, am I going to go right into it or am I going to make a beeline? Beeline, right? Because I have an idea set in my mind that they're unsafe for whatever reason. So my neuroscience, my system is going to do whatever it can to keep me safe and to keep me protected. The problem with that can be that sometimes it goes on overdrive. This is a whole topic in itself. I'm getting diverted, I saw. Sorry. So coming back to beliefs, right? Are we on the same page now that our beliefs make up our world? Yes. And we can choose, our beliefs. We'll talk about that in a second. And 3, how important are mirror neurons? Are we all do we get that now? Mirror neurons are extremely important. Why? Because they affect how we connect with each other, right? If I'm putting out good energy, people will actually notice that and be attracted to that. If I'm putting out bad energy, that's what's, garbage in, garbage out. Okay? So let's look at 5 strategies to how we can actually start to shift our own beliefs. Because guess what? The beliefs that are there are already there. The relationships, in the context of relationships we're talking about, the relationships that are struggling are already struggling, right? But do we want to leave them that way or do we want to improve them? If it's someone who matters, then we want to improve it, right? And we often wait for the other person to take action first. Who's guilty of that? Who's guilty of that? We all, come on, let's be honest, right? Let's be honest. We want the other person to do something different, then we'll be better with them, blah, 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 right? We want them to change. We want them to change their ways. We want them to do something different. We want them to stop nagging, whatever it is, right? We're not looking at our own accountability. What I'm trying to get at is we have to work from the inside out. This is not necessarily about doing big things. It's about shifting your own mindset. And that way you shift your own mirror neurons. Isn't that amazing? If you can do it, isn't that amazing? Yes, maybe. Okay. So the first strategy, again, I'm going to come back to this for a second. What do you notice here? Paper, dot. But what do you notice first? And where does your focus go? On the dot, right? So our brain is so wonderful. The human brain is so wonderful because it will focus where we want it to focus. So if we want to focus on what is wrong, guess what will happen? We'll get more of that. This white space will actually blur out. It will actually blur out and we'll just notice the dot. In the same way, in our relationships, a relationship that's not working, guess what we're noticing? We're noticing the dots, right? So the first strategy is to actually start noticing what the person is doing right. And so what we do is you make a list, and this is on your own time. You think about that one relationship or two relationships that are not working, whichever ones that are important to you, and make a list of 5 to 10 things that they're doing right. Now, the first thought might be, I don't have 5 things. 5 things? I can't think of 3 things that they're doing right. I can't think of 1 thing that they're doing right. They're usually messing up. Anyone have that thought? So what you do is you actually take a piece of paper, plain piece of paper, and put down the numbers 1 to 10 on one side. Or, if you want to really challenge yourself, come with 10. Otherwise, even choose 5. It's fine. And I promise you, your brain will find them. I promise you. When I first started working with a coach I've been coaching now, mashallah, 20 years. But when I first started, way back when, my coach asked me to make a gratitude list. And she told me, make a list of 100 things that you're grateful for. I said, are you insane? I literally said, what do you mean? Are you insane? So she said, no, go back, take a piece of paper and write down the numbers 1 to 100, just a blank piece of paper, and write down the numbers 1 to 100. I did that, and in 3 days it was full. It wasn't full in one sitting, but in 3 days it was full, and I went over the 100. So the point I'm trying to make is that the brain will focus on where you divert the attention. So look at that relationship, the one that's naggly, irritating, annoying, that person that's getting on your nerves, whatever it is, and write down 5 to 10 things that they're doing right, okay? And put that list where you can see it. So you're not going to hide it away. You're going to put it where you can actually see it, and you don't have to show it to them. Oh, look what I did. No, it's not about the other person. It's about you and starting to shift your own mindset. This is where you're actually training yourself. You're shifting your focus, and that's actually going to shift how you mirror the other person as well, right? So that's strategy number 1, okay? Strategy number 2 is go back again to that first thought you wrote down right at the beginning about the relationship that's not working. Just notice for a second. And when you look at that thought, do you notice, does it have a blaming nature to it?
Yeah.
A touch, sometimes more, sometimes less, right? But what we tend to do is we tend to blame the other person, and we get involved in a blame game, right? And what that does is it keeps us really justified. Sure, I'm absolutely right in my position. The person has done this, that, and the other to me, right? But what is that giving me? Think about it. More stress. Bingo. What else is that blame giving me or giving you?
You feel that you don't have the power to change the situation because you're giving that power to the other person.
Exactly. You have put the ball in the other person's court instead of your own, right? And you're feeling stressed. What else? Anything else?
But the question is, why should you feel like you should take on the blame?
That's exactly it. Exactly. Thank you for pointing that out. Because blame is one of those things. Either you take it or give it. Right? So I'm going to we have to shift our thinking away from the blame game completely. So that's a game, if we play, guess what we're going to do? We're going to be right, but we're going to be lonely. We're going to be justified, but the relationship's going to die. Slowly. It might die a slow death, but then guess what will happen? Resentment, anger, blame, more of those beliefs, more justification, and it just goes on and on and on and on.
Right on your end, and the person who does the other side is not changing, and your thoughts are actually the fact that that's what it is. Right?
Again, evidence. Exactly. Your thought will be evidence because you will be right. That's how we work. That's our physiology. See, no matter what, if you look at it from another point of view, the other person might say they are right. This is it. We get caught up in these situations day to day without realizing it. But guess what? if you're waiting for the other person, you might be waiting till the cows come home. But if you begin, just look at, I'm talking about accountability, right? We're talking about changing our own relationships and having something that we can control. That's what these strategies are all about. And thank you for bringing that up. Because if I'm waiting for the other person to change, I might be waiting till the cows come home. But I want to feel better, right? Or do I want to feel justified and lonely in my corner? It really depends on the experience you choose. Because our beliefs, again, affect our experience. So we will be miserable. We might be punishing the other person, but miserable we will be. Make sense? Does that not make sense? Physically, we'll have the symptoms. Emotionally, we'll be upset. We'll have the anxiety. We'll have the stress. The other person may not even know about it. How many times somebody does something, we're kudoing, the Urdu word kudoing, we're sitting there kudoing over it, and the other person doesn't even know. Happens? You were going to say something.
I think to that brother's point, maybe at that point when somebody thinks I've done everything, then I was going to connect it to Sister Jeremiah's point that maybe that's the point where all of those 10 boxes you have checked it out, that I don't have any of this, and it's probably the time to just check out this.
Maybe, but again, before you do that, you have to really look at what evidence am I collecting? And am I willing to give up the blame game? We're going to talk about another strategy that helps as well. But in order to actually give up the blame game is, if we don't, right, imagine, right, you're having an argument, you're blaming the other person, they're blaming you. You're attack, defend, attack, defend, attack, defend. And since we're mirroring each other, because that's what we do, especially with people that we're really, really close to, we're mirroring each other all the time. The argument escalates, right? This happens in our lives all the time. And we will be very much in our position, but we won't achieve anything, right? Like Imam Ali alayhi salam teaches us this. He says, the greatest fault is when one criticizes others for the same faults present in oneself. So we're often not seeing that we're blaming, they're defending, but it's much the same thing, right? So if we were to exercise our mirror neurons consciously and to create something different, wouldn't that be amazing? So this is it. It's like the second strategy here, speaks to your point, brother, is give the other person the benefit of the doubt. Who said it's easy? I didn't say it's easy. Because again, we are justified in our model of the world, right? You're right, absolutely. But is right making you happy? Is right making you connected? Is right giving you the relationship you want with this person? Not, right? Not right. Not right. Exactly. How do you notice that? Yeah.
How do you use that in the situation that you described earlier about math? Like somebody believes that I'm not good at math. How do you change that person's perspective that, you can be good if you do these things?
That's such a good point you made. That's such a good point, because sometimes we're stuck on one side and we want to go to the other. Now, a lot of times what people do is they use affirmations, right? They will start saying things like, oh, but I am good at math. Now, that's not going to be my reality, because it's going to create a conflict. And then, a lot of times people will say, oh, go to the mirror. I don't do this, by the way, with my clients. I don't recommend affirmations at all, because they don't work. And why they don't work is because the belief is the truth. So what I need to do in that situation, how I would work is look at, okay, what else am I good at? Or what do I really want? You kind of find a way in between. You sort of work in between. And sometimes like sort of indirectly, because the nervous system is such that it will get triggered faster than you actually know. So before you know it, that belief will be triggered. So you can't go head on sometimes. Yeah. And that is the work that's done like deeper with clients, that kind of thing. But does that answer your question?
Mental mindset.
Yeah, so it's training yourself. Yeah, but I mean, I've written 2 books, so I kind of know about what you're talking about. But the point here is everybody is unique. We all have a unique model of the world, and we have to find where our unique inspiration is. But coming back to relationships, the strategy is really just give the person the benefit of the doubt. And when you start doing that, remember, you've already made a list of what they do right. So you're focusing on that. You're starting to shift your focus. You're retraining your brain. Then you're giving them benefit of the doubt. Maybe there's something else in their model of the world, something's going on for them that I don't know. Give them the benefit. So what happens is you start to shift your thinking, and then you will start mirroring each other differently. You will start to create new evidence over time. Did you have a question? Can we take comments later? Is that okay? Okay, sorry. Because I just want to kind of not get lost, right? So the other thing is, like, you could think of it this way. There's a wonderful hadith on giving excuses, right? Imam Ali alayhi salam said, accept your fellow brother's excuse, and even if he has no excuse, then find an excuse for him. So this is the whole point. If somebody is messing up, instead of reading the riot act, we do, right? We read the riot act in our brains. Imagine the energy that you're putting out there towards that person. Can relate. Okay, enough said, right? Makes sense? Is this useful? Okay, good. Now the third strategy, moving on, we have 5. So the third strategy, actually Sister Jermeen mentioned it in the communication section, which is to listen. And yes, we do listen at different levels, but most of the time when a relationship is in distress, what happens? You get triggered immediately, right? So if an argument is happening, the next thing you know, you have your own rebuttal going on in your brain. They haven't finished the conversation, right? And what are you doing? You are kind of having a rebut immediately. So in order to stop that, the first thing you need to do is breathe. So I call this 666 breathing. Basically, if you're finding yourself really agitated and you just want to answer them back and all of this, breathe in for 6, hold the breath for 6, and then release for 6. And do this 3 times. And you will find that your nervous system will start to calm down. So instead of like getting into that argument phase, you can actually relax your nerve, because sometimes we don't want to argue. It just happens because we are triggered, right? I mean, trauma is a whole other topic that we can talk about, but I'm not going to get into that. I don't have the time for it today, but inshallah, maybe next time. But the point is that we want to calm ourselves down as best we can. This is why people say, leave the situation, go for a walk, do this, do that. But the one thing we can always remind ourselves to do is to breathe. Right? So we breathe, calm yourself down, and then listen. And sometimes, you can say, oh, listen, but you don't really know how to listen. So the point is, if they're saying some things, ask them, if they're rambling, say, okay, can you please use shorter sentences in a nice way, not in a rude way? And then ask, feed back what you're hearing. So you can almost check in and say, you know what, I think you said X, Y, and Z. Am I right? Or am I wrong? And allow the person to correct you, because sometimes when you're in mid-argument or mid-situation, it's very difficult to connect. And if we start to listen, we really start to connect. And we have to abandon the WIFM radio. WIFM radio is what's in it for me. So most of our communication is based on what's in it for me. And how am I going to win this? Yes? Many times. Or what am I going to get out of this? So we have to look at that and just abandon that for a second and go, okay, maybe you could do WIFU, what's in it for us? I just thought of that. Not cool. Okay. Okay, moving swiftly along as we have short on time. Strategy 4. This is one you're going to like, I think. It's the strategy of forgiveness. So what is forgiveness? What is it?
When love comes before ego.
Yes, where love comes before ego, true. What else is forgiveness? Release. Good point. Yes, exactly. What else?
It's usually a self-respect.
Really? You think it's selfless? I think it's quite the opposite.
For your inner peace.
Yeah, exactly. Forgiveness is one of the biggest graces you give yourself, actually. Because we think that, when we are holding on to a grudge, we think that we're actually punishing the other person, right? But we're actually punishing ourselves because we're the ones suffering the anxiety. We're the ones getting the physical symptoms. We're the ones reliving. Think about the last time when something happened to you. Maybe, a friend did something, or your spouse did something, or your kid did something, and you go and you tell a friend about it. Or you go and talk to somebody else about it. Has anyone done that? I think we've all done that, right? What happens when you relive that experience? Bingo. And you relive all the emotions, you relive the physical anxiety, all of that. So each time we relive our story, we relive the pain. So think about forgiveness in a different way. Forgiveness is about having the story without the pain. That's what forgiveness is. It's releasing the emotional baggage. So it's a grace you give yourself. And then when you're feeling good, guess what your mirror neurons are doing? If you're at peace, you're emitting peace. So the other person also has an opportunity to come down, and the relationship has a chance to recover. So the practical way to do this is to write a forgiveness letter. And please, please, please do not send it to the other person. Do not read it to them. This is not for them. This is for you. Okay? So you write a letter with any of the things that, that ghubar, that anger, the whatever's in there, you write it all down. And you kind of say, okay, I'm letting this all go. You did this, whatever you did, right? You write it down, but with the intention to let go. Please remember, if you don't do it with that intention, it will only strengthen. Our neural networks are very powerful. They will strengthen. So you have to say, I am letting this go. I am setting myself free. I am actually giving myself peace. I'm putting this behind me. And then you tear it up. And then you write another sort of note to yourself about what you want your relationship to now look like. What do I want my relationship to look like? What do I want this relationship to feel like? Visualize, imagine. It's fantastic. Okay? You are actually seeding your brain. You are creating new neural pathways by doing that. I've recommended this to so many clients over the years for different things. I've done it myself. It works wonders. And the other thing to really remember is if you do it once and it doesn't work, doesn't mean it didn't work. Means there's more to do. So go back and do it again. Okay? Go back and do it again. This is access to peace. It's access to better relationships. It just is.
You rewire your neurons?
Absolutely. Neuroplasticity is one of the things that we don't understand. This is a whole other topic. But yeah, I mean, the thing is that we are constantly being rewired. So the more kind of like, if we are, again, garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you're giving yourself negative things, you're rewiring yourself in a negative way. Same thing with nutrition, same thing with other things. Mind and body is one system, right? Mind, body, spirit is one system. So you have to really think, okay, I am shifting, I'm seeding my brain. I'm creating something completely new. Now imagine, if you look at relationships from that way, won't they get better? It doesn't matter whether the other person changes or not. What matters is that if you feel at peace, that changes everything. If I'm at peace in my relationships, that's the most important thing, isn't it? And imagine when you're mirroring that, guess what's going to happen? We're naturally going to mirror that. Try it, right? We have to break that blame, defend. That is the thing we have to break in our relationships. It's so important, right? And that's the one message I wanted to really bring home today. And the last very simple strategy is to create a plan of kindness. So especially in those relationships that are struggling, look, it's so easy for us to be kind to strangers. It's so easy for us to do charity other places, yahan de diya, wahan de diya. We contribute to causes, we give of our time. But when it comes to those people that really matter, we tend to become a little petty. Yes? Especially if things are not working, we tend to be petty. About little things. Why should I do this? Why should I go there? Why should I call them? They didn't, those things, those are the opposite. That's like seeding your brain for something negative. So create a plan of kindness. This is, again, just for you. So you sit down, you keep this person in mind, and you think, what are 5 things that I can do to just demonstrate some kindness towards this person, some compassion? And then just do them and not jatao them, please. We do not, it's not about, letting them know I did this for you, but in a way that's just gentle. And if we bring that, it will naturally bring happiness. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever makes another believer happy makes me happy. And whoever makes me happy makes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happy. Isn't that amazing? So you're actually making yourself happy too by doing that, right? Because you're shifting the way that you're thinking about everything. So we've covered the 5 strategies. What do you guys think? And remember, they all connect to each other. So you can use whichever ones make sense to you and start there. Right? I hope this session was really useful. If you would like any more information, or you want to talk to me about coaching, or you want to connect, I have a QR code at the back of the room. You can just scan it, and that'll give you all my contact details, and we can take it from there. Right? So my first book is, this was Discover the Best in You. This is kind of a personal journey that you can kind of dip in and out of my books the way that I write them, section by section. And this is all about, goal setting, general relationships, self-care, abundance, and that sort of thing. The second book, which came out during COVID actually, is called Discover the Best in Your Relationships. Now, this is the one that I feel like really very connected to, because we're talking about our relationships with ourselves and beyond. So it's your spiritual relationship, your siblings, your parents, and your community. So I talk about different things in that as well. And they're both available on Amazon.
So coaching is available through...
Coaching, I work one-on-one. Yeah, I work one-on-one. I also can do group stuff and workshops. I'm based in Chicago, and I can work online and, remotely as well. But thank you, everyone, for listening.
So now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Zafar Naqvi. He's a psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, philanthropist, thinker, musician, and poet. He is a faculty member of Harvard Medical School and the university. He belongs to a literary family of Amroha. His father is Syed Qamar Naqvi and is a poet with 5 published books.
If you look back, developmentally, each of us, including myself, was once a two-year-old child, right? Terrible twos. What is the catchphrase of a 2-year-old? No. And the way he had basically been reprimanded, scolded, don't say no, to the point that the 2-year-old believe that that's the most cardinal sin in the world. You can do anything but to say no. So that's how the 2-year-old received the message and been basically encrypted in his mind. Mind and brain. I'm a psychiatrist. Who is a psychiatrist? Psychiatrist is a doctor of brain and doctor of mind, both. Who is doctor of mind? Doctor of mind is a psychologist, and doctor of brain only is a neurologist. Okay, so that's the start, and we are going to go further in this journey. All right. So now it may be okay for a 2-year-old to think like that, but when you grow up, you need to change the script of your mind. It is okay to say no, otherwise you will end up in a very embarrassing situations. 6 people will ask you to meet at 3 o'clock, and you will say, oh yes, I will meet my neighbor, meet my spouse, meet my friend at 3. What's going? I think it was working fine before. All right. So, and then the other thing is why we feel lonely. What is the difference between the loneliness and being alone? What's the difference? If somebody is alone or lonely, what is the difference? Any idea?
Mentally, putting yourself, shutting away from everybody mentally, physically you're alone.
Mm-hmm. So sometimes
I could be in a group
mm-hmm.
and still feel very lonely.
Uh-huh.
Because I have stuck, I've closed everything, and I just want to be sitting here brooding and not being happy, and
Mm-hmm.
so I could be in a crowd and be alone.
Mm-hmm. And can you look back and think for a reason? Developmentally, if you look, so developmentally, if we grow up in an environment with our feelings never got validated, we basically grew up with the thinking that our feelings are not important, right? Our feelings, throw your feelings away. That's what people say. Gussa aaye to pani pee lo. Anger is a very important emotion. We'll talk about that, how to deal with that in relationships, how to process that, what are the steps. Because anger is the most disowned emotion in the world. If you ask 100 people, no, I don't have an anger problem. He or she has anger problem, right? If you put a D in front of anger, it becomes danger, right? And anger is like a red flashing light in front of your car's dashboard. That there's something wrong with your fuel system, with your tire pressure. Do something. It's like a tip of the iceberg. And then we'll talk more in detail what is underlying the anger. Anyway, so coming back to that, loneliness. You grew up in a situation when your feelings are not validated, your feelings are not important, then you actually psychologically grew up within solution that you put your true self like this, you just turn it around. Your true self is facing inwards, and your false, you put up a persona, a false self. So you get up in the morning, you meet with 100 people, like 50 people, 60 people, you meet with them. Everybody, every interaction is with your false self, your true self. At the end of the day, you go back to your bed, and then you feel lonely because your true self never met with anybody. Your whole day interaction was from your false self. So obviously, you are lonely because your true self never had a human oxygen interaction. So that's the one thing. The other thing, what is the difference between the I of a person and the me of a person? Any idea? Which is this I versus me. What is the difference? Can you hear me? I and me. What is the difference?
Ego, and we as in my humble self,
Mm-hmm.
looking more into yourself. I'm this, I'm that. But
Mm-hmm.
the ego would like to, if you want to separate it,
Yeah. You're in the area. Let me fine tune that. So I versus me. Have you heard a sentence that he is very rude to I, or she is very bad to I? No. We say that he is rude to me. We say she is rude to me. We never said that he was rude to I. Why not? So what is I? The I is what you know about yourself, your strengths and weaknesses. And your me is your persona, how people look at you. Right? Now, ideally the I and me should be like this. Like this. But if there's a gulf between the I and me, imagine what kind of problem you will end up with. One, is that loneliness will increase, right? Second, you will be a very good person at heart. You're an excellent husband, you're an excellent wife, you're an excellent brother and sister, but people are not giving you what you deserve. Why? At the end of the day, you say, I am such a holy person, I am such a saint, but people are seeing me as a devil. Why? It's because there is a gulf between what your I is and what your me is. So you need to do a work between the I and the me in order to get them together so that you get what you deserve. People can only see you through your behavior because there are 4 boxes of human informations which we need to, out of those 4 boxes, we need to work on 2, because let me explain. What are the 4 boxes of our information about us? What are those boxes? The boxes are, box number 1 is the box about the information about us which we know and people know. And that's our public box. Everybody knows that. What's your name? What's your hair color? Right? What kind of car you drive? That's your public box. Then the box number 2 is the information about you which only you know and people do not know. That's called your private box. Right? But then there are 2 more boxes. Box number 3 is the information about you which neither you nor anybody else know, and that's your unconscious box. And the box number 4 is the information about you which people know but you do not know, and that's your blind box. For example, when you watch yourself in a family movie, when you watch yourself in a wedding, on a video, all of a sudden you realize that in the heat of the moment, you're shrugging your shoulder, right? You're blinking your eyes. People already saw that. Maybe I'm doing something now which you are seeing and I'm not aware of, right? And all of a sudden you realize, in the heat of the moment, so you were blind. Or if you have a problem speeding, if you speed your car, the person sitting next to you is very well aware that you're speeding 90 miles an hour, right? But you're blind to that. That's called blind box. All right. So the idea is, sorry? The third box is the information which neither you nor anyone else know, and that's your unconscious box. System unconscious, system conscious. I wish we have more time. We will be talking about what are the operations, rules, and of the system conscious and unconscious, which actually go back and forth in the poetic absolvement, in dreams analysis, and things like that. You can tap that data from unconscious to conscious. But so now we know box 1, 2, and 3, 4. Box 1, 2, you don't need to work on that, right? But, why? Because you already know that. Now, the more you expand the box 3 and 4, the more powerful you become, the more knowledge you get about, and then the less number of chances that certain part of your personality will surprise you at a bad time, pop up at the wrong time, which can culminate into a bad decision or translate into a bad decision, right? So this is, and how you do that? I think as the sister was saying that, in the therapy, when you go to therapy, you can expand these boxes. That's very important. What is therapy? Therapy is the brain and mind work together, but they unfortunately speak different languages. And you need to cater both. Now we have to give an answer for the forgiveness also. But emotions, do you know when is the birth of our feelings? What is the problem with all right, when we say that the poetry is touching our heart, what does it mean? So when is the birth of, the problem in the human beings, there are a lot of problems. One of the problem is the birth of the when is the birth of our emotions? On the day 1, right? You start getting feeling towards your mother, father, or caregiver, day 1, right? And when is the birth of our speech? 2.5 years. So there's a time lag between the feelings of the birth of feelings and the birth of the speech. And that time lag needs to be covered, and I will explain it to you later how we can cover that and why the poetic absolvement, why the poetic paradoxes sometimes touch those. There is a concept of, there was a psychologist, his name was Bolus, and his concept is there are some thoughts. So he gave the concept that some knowns, unthoughtful knowns. So you know, but you never had a chance to think about it. Now, let me just give you one more thing here. So we know that there's a time lag of 2 years between the birth of feelings and birth of the speech. So between the birth until we get the speech, so there are 3 levels of human communications. The most sophisticated way of human communication is speech. But we are getting at it so late, right? Has anybody of you ever seen the pony, the child horse on the day 1 when the horse is born? Have you ever seen anybody like day 1 when? Okay, if you get a chance, try to see. When the horse, pony is born, on the day 1 he starts walking. हम अशरफुल मखलूक़ात हैं, हमें 1 साल लगता है चलने में. Why? A human baby takes 1 year to walk. A horse baby walks on the day 1. He comes out of the mother's womb. So, because every connections in the human being has to be mirrored, there are circumstances of aha moment for the baby. For example, so it's very common in our culture that the emotion of love, right? If you say like romantic love, not the mother dear father, romantic love, can bring some flush to the face, right? Because that has never been mirrored. from your early ages, from your mother and father, that romantic love. Everything has to be mirrored. There's a saying that in order for you to appreciate the sunlight, what are the two things you need? The two things are essential. One is that the sun should be out, but the other is you should have a retina, an intact retina, eye. If either of them is absent, if you don't have retina and the sun is, if you have a full like 6x6 and it's nighttime. So it has to be an approximation of external versus internal for any human experience or any neurons to grow. That stage-wise growth, whether it's a physical growth, I gave you a physical example like the locomotion of the horse, but emotional growth, sometimes people do not have that theory of mind, for example, which is a big concept. Sometimes they become 40 and they don't have that. Now, coming to another thing, forgiveness. What is forgiveness? I mean, this is a very common experience that people come to me and people come to like therapists and psychiatrists. Like for I think last week one of the patients came to me, Dr. Naqvi, you know Jessica was like his girlfriend. You know just how bad Jessica has been with me. I mean, I know them. And then last week I just thought about it. I'm just basically killing myself. I have holding a fireball in my hand and keeping the grudge. I just said, let's forgive her. And remember, we were talking about forgiveness and blah, blah, blah. But guess what? I've forgiven her, but I'm still not at peace. Why not? He was asking the question. What is the answer to this question? In order to understand that question, you need to understand two things. Number one, forgiveness. What is forgiveness? By definition, is it an emotion? No. What is that? Sorry? Forgiveness is an agreement between who and who? Between you and yourself, right? What is the difference between agreement and the contract, by the way? The contract, for the contract, both the parties doesn't have to agree. I mean, you can go to your employer, they hand over you the contract, and you have to sign that. I mean, whether you agree with that or not, you have to. And the agreement is both the parties have to agree. So forgiveness is an agreement to you. And what is the agreement? That I am understanding that such and such person has been wronged to me, has basically conned me or hurt me in the past. Going past that, beyond that, after that, I am making an agreement at emotional level that I am forgiven. But here is the problem. The problem is that we just talk about that the feelings are born on day one, right? And the speech is born on the third year, 2.5 years. So just doing the lip service in the speech that I have forgiven something is not going to work. So how? Why? Listen, there are certain, there are some feelings, right, which were given to us by the God at the pre-verbal level before giving us the power of speech. The pre-verbal feeling. So those feelings never had a chance to get recorded in the verbal language because because they're pre-verbal, right? Those feelings never got recorded in the verbal language. That's why they cannot be retrieved or remembered in the verbal language, and hence they cannot be forgotten and forgiven in the verbal language. Let me repeat again. Because those thoughts were first time recorded in a non-verbal level, they never had a chance to be recorded in a verbal language. That's why they cannot be remembered in a verbal language, and hence they cannot be forgotten and forgiven by just saying the lip service. That is the reason that people say, I have forgiven. So maybe they may be doing like lip service. There is in the brain, there are some fibers called frontal limbic pathways. You have to traverse those fibers in order to do the work, which basically at the emotional level, you can forgive somebody. That takes time. Then that's a true forgiveness. So, and then the level of communication I was talking about. So the most unsophisticated level of communication in the human being developmentally is making other person feel how you feel, as your sister was telling about that. Some people can, yes, even people who are grown up, they can basically go to that level of prematurity. That only way they can communicate is through projecting their feeling onto you. That's the baby's feeling when they're born, until few months. Then after a few months, what is the next level of human communication? The next level of human communication developmentally in the baby is locomotor or action phase, hands and feet, motion shuru hote hain bacche ke, right? Then that is the way of communication. Mother pehchanti hai uski movement se, right? That is the second level in the developmental hierarchy. But it's not yet sophisticated. The most sophisticated level of human communication is speech. That is the reason whenever human race will regress back to the earlier level, immature level of communication, there will be a problem. Guess what? All the World War I, World War II were fought on a battleground on a premature level of human communication, which is action phase. Right? And when did the life got preserved? When they have a table talk, peace talks, ceasefire. Whenever human lives are preserved whenever you are talking versus fighting. There is a concept in psychodynamics that people who are abusers, like for domestic violence cases, abusers, they have their conflicts basically stuck at that level, which is the pre-verbal level, and at that level, because they regressed to that level, at that level, the only way of communication they had was action. So that's a way of communication that they, you keep on repeating. But that doesn't give a license to hit somebody, but this is the way of, one of the way of explaining this level of communication. So with this being said, any questions before we move further? Because emotions are very important. Emotions are here for a reason. Emotions, I can give you some trick. You can actually decipher some feelings. Decipher some fake emotions. So I was trained in Royal College of Psychiatry from London, right? Before I came to Harvard, I was working in London for 10 years. But then I had to move to US because the love of my life, my wife was doing residency here. Okay? So during that time, I was actually living in a suitcase and I have to go back and forth transatlantic. And I am a Desi man, right? And at that time, like 9/11 and everything. So I actually had experienced a lot of paranoia at the airport, right? But I tackled it very well because I was trained in psychology. So what I said, one of the officers said that, this is a common myth and misunderstanding that if you're lying, a liar cannot look into your eyes, right? That's a common misunderstanding. And I said to the officer on Philadelphia airport that, he was asking me questions, why you are going back and forth, and your country of origin is Pakistan and things. Anyways, then you're coming from London. And I was telling him the truth. I was not lying. I was just telling him because I was, doing membership of Royal College of Psychiatrists. I have a baby here, things like that. He was because I also have migraine problem. I get headaches. So because of that, I'm probably not able to engage my eye contact with him. And he said that. I said, guess what? I'm a psychiatrist, and I have been trained in psychology and psychodynamic for an extra 5 years. And you know what? In psychology, if you are lying, a liar cannot disengage the eye contact. He has to clap the eyeballs until the liar believes that you're believing in his lie. If I'm not lying, if I'm truthful, I don't care whether you're believing in my lie or not. So there are some. So let me repeat. If I'm a truthful person, right? If I'm saying that today is Sunday, I know today is Sunday, right? I don't care if you believe me or not, right? I don't have to, keep gazing you and clapping my eyeballs to you until I see that you are believing me. But yes, if I say it's a Tuesday, then yes, then I have to make sure that I've been able to con you. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is Yes.
So, prolonged contact leads to lying.
Sorry?
Prolonged contact leads to lying.
No, so nothing is absolute. What I'm saying, the myth is that prolonged contact means that you are truthful. That is wrong.
Right, so it's lying.
So you are making an absolute judgment. Like, we are not talking black and white. It can be either. What I'm saying, the myth is that if you are hesitant in the eye contact, then you lie. That's wrong. It can be so many very. I mean, somebody can have like me, like migraines.
Eye contact has nothing to do.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's a myth. Okay, all right. So all right. Having said that, what is the other way? What is if you classify human emotions, and there are like so many classifications. I think 124 classifications, but the most easiest way of classifying human emotions is the following. Human emotions are basically of two types: either primary emotions or secondary emotions. What are the primary emotions? The primary emotions are those human emotions which are visible on your face. You don't have to know the language of the person, like sadness, like anger, like joy, like contempt, like disgust, like surprise. Surprise. One thing about surprise. Surprise is the only human emotion. I'm giving you this trick. For example, if I park my car in the morning and my car kissed the car of my friend, I have a fender bender, right? And I know that I hit the car. That same friend meet with me here in the lunchtime, and I know that I am the culprit. And he will say, Zafar, this person is a mad, crazy person. Who is like, that person? And I know that it's me, right? I will show surprise to him, and if I am faking my surprise is going to last longer than 5 to 6 seconds. Any surprise which is extended more than 5 to 6 seconds is a fake surprise. So you can decipher that from the face. Why? Because the surprise tend to dissolve into fear, amusement, or anger, depending upon, right? Amusement, like if it's a joke. Surprise stays for 5-6 seconds, then dissolves. What is the difference between a surprise face and a fearful face? The only difference at the facial expression is the following: that the lower lid become more tense in the fear, and the rest of that is the same as a surprise. So just an example. Emotions have. Stop. Shall I stop? 5 more minutes? Okay. Emotions have evolutionary meanings also. What are the evolutionary meanings of emotion? Any idea? Oh, by the way, I did not say what are the secondary emotions. So primary emotions, what are the secondary emotions? Secondary emotions are the combination of two primary emotions, like emotion of guilt, shame, love, hate. Either combination of two primary emotions and the third valence attached to that, or two primary emotions. It is important to understand emotions deeply. Why? Because if you don't understand that, how you're going to feel it. What is the final destination of any human emotion? The final destination of any human emotion is to feel the feeling at your heart level. Feeling the feeling, it's the final destination. If there's so many emotions are waiting to be felt, they're actually becoming time alien and waiting to be felt. That can cause a lot of psychological pressure in the front of your mind. Anyway, so there's a saying that I think you probably heard that it's a very common joke that nobody loves me today, right? Have you heard about that? Nobody loves me. That phrase. That's a joke. Why? Because love is not like this kind of like emotion. It takes time to get in and fizzle out. So these secondary emotions, people interchangeably use guilt and shame. I just give you an example. Guilt and shame. If you ask 100 people, they will say guilt and shame interchangeably, but they're exactly, I will explain and I will prove how. They're exactly opposite of each other. How? They both are very powerful. One is empowering, the other is disenfranchising. Let's take one by one. Feeling of guilt makes you powerful, hopeful, make your future brighter. If somebody is harboring an emotion of guilt, he has the power that he has done something, he can rectify it, he can change the future. And the future is under his control. If somebody is having feeling of shame is like blaming and shaming. You don't understand what on earth I have done, how can I change my setting, my future, how I can rectify that. You become reclusive. So in other words, somebody harboring the emotion of guilt, his movement, his direction will towards people. And somebody having shame, his direction will be away from people, right? Recluse, seclusive, withdraw. Exactly opposite of each other. So this is how important in distinguishing the feeling of like different feelings. So just to give you a quick example, evolutionary, what are the evolutionary purposes? There's so many evolutionary purposes. By the way, emotions are so important that it can actually trump, not Donald Trump, it can trump our natural instincts. How? What are the natural instincts? The natural instinct is a drive to live, is drive to procreate, reproduction, right? Is a drive for sustenance, eat. All these things were endangered in COVID. That's why we have extreme anxiety. You have dreaded scenes of a departmental store or a grocery store, right? Anyway, emotions are so strong that they are the only mental mechanisms which can override our basic instincts. How? If, for example, the only thing which is available for you to eat is disgusting, you won't eat that. That's overriding the instinctual drives, all right? Second example, if you are so in despair and depression and desperate, that can override the power of living, the drive of living, and you can attempt a suicide, right? The third example is the emotion of love. Emotion of love. What emotion? So for reproduction, for procreate, you need intimacy, and for intimacy, you have to pass a very important barrier of disgust, because it delusions. It's disillusion. It dissolves. First of all, your grandiosity has to be dissolved in order to come closer to the other person and get the intimacy. So it basically dissolves our pride. But then second barrier it has to basically cross is the barrier of disgust. So if there is a disgusting environment, if there's something disgust in by the way, how do you see disgust on the face? What's the expression? What's the expression is that it's a protective mechanism. You squeeze your eyes like this, right? You tighten your eye, and you scrunch, like wrinkle your nose. Your lips, upper lip is going to get more up, and lower lip it gets loose. Why? It's a mechanism. It's a natural evolutionary mechanism. Anything disgusting should not enter your orifices. You should not smell it, see it, eat it. There was a psychologist, Michael Gottman. He actually did a love lab, and he came out where he interviewed like more than 1,600 people, and he actually he predicted the divorces. Like this couple is going to be divorced in 6 months. And you know what are the two things which we basically counted in his prediction? The most important things for any couple who is separated to be finally divorced. He said like sometimes three things or two things. So, but two important things are the feelings of the emotions of contempt and criticization, and the third is stonewalling. You know what stonewalling is? Silent treatment. Yeah, silent treatment. Shutting off. I don't care. वो है जॉन एलिया का शेर है, हमारे चचा होते जॉन एलिया, उनका शेर है कि एक ही तो हादसा है ये और वो ये कि आज तक एक ही तो I will explain it. एक ही तो हादसा है ये और वो ये कि आज तक बात नहीं कही गई, बात नहीं सुनी गई. Now this is a very deep share if you go into like subjective objective spaces anyways, but in English it means that the irony is that this is the most important tragedy of the world, that there are certain things which never been said, but there's also certain things which never been contained. You need a receptacle for your feelings. It's never been contained. Okay? So those feelings, where are those feelings? They are trying to find a destination to be felt. Okay? So contempt. Contempt, stonewalling me, I refuse to, I'm not going to, your feelings are not important. Okay? So contempt कैसे होगा वैसे face पे? How do you see contempt on the face? Typically, it's a unilateral facial expression in which your upper lip, if you are right-hander, your left upper lip, if you're left-hander, your right upper lip is going to go up like this. This is contempt, like this. So contempt predicts the divorce rates more than 90%. Contempt, stonewalling, and critical comments, criticizing. I think I should end it here because I'm running out of time. I wish I had more time. It's like a 1.5 hour lecture, so maybe जिंदगी रही तो फिर बचे तो अगले बरस हमें और ये गम पे रहे. Charan ji, thank you very much.